I had a pretty good childhood back in Brazil. I'd say I had a healthy childhood lifestyle, always involved in sports. You know, Brazil is a soccer country, and everybody plays soccer, and you have idols, you cheer for your favorite club. And I was obviously uh, immersed in the football soccer culture. You know, my brothers played, and my father had his favorite team, and that you pass that to your children, and so on. And played a lot on the streets. You know, exposed to nature. You know, spent summer in a town by the ocean. I lived in the country. Uh, Visit a lot of farms, you know, the country. I was exposed to the city, to the rural life, you know, cows, horses too. Uh, yeah, so played a lot on the streets. You know, we had this freedom, climb trees, swim in rivers, and all that I don't see much nowadays. So comparing that to this new lifestyle that kids just have iPads and screens and stuff, I'd say I was very lucky to grow up in the 80s, where I had to do a lot of play on the street with friends, you know, and yeah, I think I had a pretty good childhood in that regard. So I was always involved in sports, played soccer like everybody else, but later on, I found out that I was not very good in soccer, and I became very good in basketball. So I was playing basketball during my middle school and high school years. And at the beginning of high school year, actually, I went home one day, and my brother asked me to get down and to be wrapped around his legs because he wanted to show me a martial art move. And I was all weird about it, but I said, okay, show me. And then he did an arm bar, which is a joint lock that can cause injury on the elbow joint. And I was like, wow, how did you do that? And he said, oh, I'm taking jiu-jitsu. And I was like, wow, this is great knowledge. Please take me there with you. I'd like to do that too. And I went to a first class, and we had to ride 2 hours to the next town that there was jiu-jitsu instruction. And he was doing this for a month. And on my first class, I was hooked, and I was 16 years old. And I remember that after the first class of jiu-jitsu, I never played basketball again. I totally dedicated 100% of my time. That was towards the end of my high school years into just training jiu-jitsu. Well, I always admired the American lifestyle, and of course, in Brazil, we were bombarded by American culture through movies and TV stuff. And also, I always loved the language, English. You know, I remember that I would join chat rooms, try to communicate with Americans in English using translators, and I feel like I always had a calling to go to America. And the way I ended up here, it was very interesting. It looks like it was meant to be. I have memories since I was a middle school age child that I was not a good soccer player, but I had a pretty good understanding about the tactics and strategy involved in a team that I thought that my friends didn't understand. So I kind of thought that I could be a coach. I remember that clearly. And I remember because my older brothers played sports, I would stay after school and I would be watching, I'll be helping. I remember that I became a volleyball assistant referee. I really like to be part of that in that way. And I was inspired by my physical education teachers. They were my idols. Every single physical education teacher that I had inspired me to be like them. I thought that was a pretty cool position of leadership and role modeling for the children. So I thought that I would do. So I always felt like I would do college for physical education, and that's exactly what I did. So when I started training Jiu-Jitsu and I gave up basketball, I was absolutely way more inspired by my Jiu-Jitsu instructor. You know, it's like the ultimate PE teacher. And when I finished high school, I immediately enrolled in college and I became, after 4 years, a physical education teacher, even though I never taught a PE class in school ever. I never got a school job ever. I knew that I would do this college to get information, knowledge, and become one of the best jiu-jitsu instructors with the physical education knowledge that would capacitate me to be a better instructor than other ones that didn't pursue education. So I have pretty good stories about and memories about Brazil and America in Jiu-Jitsu. I remember when I was a blue belt, 17 years old, I came to Los Angeles for one of the first Pan American Championships of all Americas. And I remember that me and my friends from my hometown, the first thing we did in LA was to visit the original Gracie Academy in Torrance, Los Angeles. That school was the headquarters for Rorion Gracie, which is the creator of the UFC, and Royce Gracie. And we were so well welcomed there with an open door. They invited us to train, and we trained there every day. And one day, Royce Gracie came to the room and sparred with every single one of us. And I have no words to explain the feeling. You know, we just have seen him at the UFC winning, and all of a sudden he was so gracious to train with us, and we are not even related to him, not through academy or students, nothing like that. And that was my first time that I thought, wow, I'd love to live in America, you know, the American dream, the Jiu-Jitsu American dream. And I remember after the tournament, I went back to Brazil. I was still a blue belt, and I was just starting college. So my plans for moving to America for good came many, many years later, but absolutely was inspired by this first encounter with Royce Gracie in Los Angeles at his academy. I am 100% confident that education, pursuing a physical education bachelor's degree, contributed for me to become a much more qualified martial arts instructor. You know, not only, especially because Jiu-Jitsu is very scientific oriented in terms of leveraging physics and obviously the anatomy and physiology of the body, but the classes that I took in college in regards to education, childhood, early education, high-level sports competition training, tournaments organization, all those other aspects contributed for me, I think, to have a more holistic view of the job of the jiu-jitsu instructor, much more than what I could do only on the mat, but in terms of building a team, preparing athletes for high-level competition, taking care of students that are just looking for self-defense training, character building, confidence, self-esteem improvements. So it's way more than just being a fighter on the mat, and I absolutely believe that helped me a lot to put me in another shelf, and I'm very proud that I pursued that path, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons why I obtained very good results with my students, kids and adults, in all the regards that I mentioned before. Yeah, I'm doing this for 29 years now, almost 30, and I can tell you that just this year Brazil is opening and accepting no-gi like it is in America for many, many years before. And I have to grant that this is because of the work of John Danaher and Gordon Ryan through ADCC, who's #1, and all those no-gi events that are being live streamed are convinced people in Brazil that now this is the time to open the eyes and dedicate time and have classes dedicated to no-gi. I'd say that this is happening massively just now, this year, 29 years after I started training Jiu-Jitsu in Brazil. In Brazil, Jiu-Jitsu with the gi is still heavily adhered, but now they have no choice but to dedicate time and embrace it, because it's a movement that is going up and there's no way back. You have to embrace it or you'll be left behind. And they prove the point that no gi is way more exciting than gi. If someone wants to pursue a career in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'd say focus in education as well. Think about that if you want to pursue this career as a fighter, that career will end when you're 40 years old, you know, and what are you going to do after that? So if you want to live your whole life for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you should be prepared to become a trainer as well after that age, you know. So I would advise people to spend a little time teaching, because teaching for some people is a gift, for some others it's a skill that you have to nurture and work and train and learn and fail and get it right. But it's a long journey, you know, to drive the ship of a martial arts school. It's a complicated ship. A lot of things can go wrong, and very easily you can, you know, lose everything that you built through many, many years of work. So if you want to pursue a career in BJJ, of course, compete, train, fight, but find some way to learn how to teach as early as possible, because the number of good fighters that suddenly become teachers and they do not deliver the same result is very big. So this can be avoided if you just dedicated some time learning how to teach, because that's how martial arts are passed through generations. So one person teaching to one another, and it's a great skill, great reward to become a role model for children, you know, for your students. And I always tell people, hey, what are you doing with your life? Like, are you impacting people? How many people will show up for your funeral? You know, what are you doing here on this earth on your time? And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very rewarding, you know, because there's no prize when you receive a feedback from a student, from a parent, that you had a good impact in their lives. This is something that money cannot buy. So I believe all jiu-jitsu instructors that do that, they do that because they love what they do. They don't do that for money. And it's a beautiful, beautiful art. So I absolutely recommend, if somebody wants to do it, go for it. So as I mentioned, I'm about to complete 30 years of jiu-jitsu, and I competed over the first 10 years, and I have been teaching for about 20 years. But constantly growing, constantly learning, constantly changing. And I just told my students the other day, I told them my story as I'm about to change myself too. I'm reaching a point where I'm about to kill the fighter that lives inside me and open up and give room for a transformation so I can become a master. So that was the story that I told my students, that now I'm getting old, I'm reaching the point that I'm preparing myself to become a master someday. So constantly studying, constantly learning, constantly changing, you know, trying to become a better person every day and try to reflect that to my students. So right now I'm focusing two things in my career. I'm giving opportunity for my senior students to become teachers in my dojo. Up to now, I pretty much taught every class all these years. And now I'm comfortable in giving an opportunity for my senior students to become leaders and learn teaching in a real position as a teacher, not only as my assistant anymore. I'm letting some students to run the entire classes and have their own schedule in my academy. So I'm very happy that I'm doing this transition now. And I'm also focusing communication. I secured the Jiu-Jitsu handle on YouTube, and I'm dedicating that channel to give opportunity for all types of athletes to have a platform to speak, to show footage, to interview, from a little kid that it's unknown here in Florida to Gordon Ryan. We are interviewing and offering the platform for everybody across the board, so they can feel good about themselves and give an opportunity for the upcoming athletes, and especially children, to allow them to not just dream about being on TV or give an interview to someone after a fight, a tournament, but actually make that opportunity real for them. So I'm very proud that I'm engaged in that, and I think we're doing a very good job, and it's very exciting to be part of that.